Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad, Sayyidil Awwaleen wal Akhirin, wa Habibi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in this world created many matters which are considered causes, and the norm was created in such a way that these causes would lead to certain effects. And Allah is the creator of these causes, and Allah is the creator of these effects. So at any given time, one of these causes might exist because Allah created it. But then it may be the case that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala did not will that the effect would exist, and so it would not exist. Today we're going to look at an example of that Shaykh Abdullah RaHmah mentioned. He said that Al-Hakim, and this is the famous Al-Hakim that looked at Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim and then took the criteria that they used to give Sahih Hadith, and then he looked into Sahih Hadith that they both did not mention. This is the same Hakim. Al-Hakim in Al-Mustadrak, or rather the author of Mustadrak, he has another book that he called Tarikh Naysabur. Naysabur is now in Iran. And the way that they say it, the way that the Persian used to say it is Neshapur. So this is Naysabur. Al-Hakim, the scholar, has a book called Tarikh Naysabur. In it, he writes, I heard Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Muhammad al-Ambari, or rather al-Ambari, saying, and so he heard this from one person. He heard a person who he trusts saying, I heard Abu al-Abbas Isa ibn Muhammad ibn Isa al-Tahmani al-Marwazi saying. So you have Al-Hakim, who is narrating that he heard from someone that a person known as Al-Marwazi said. Now Al-Marwazi is the one that's going to carry all of this narration through till the end. He is the one that experienced this extraordinary matter. So Al-Marwazi says, so you have Al-Hakim, who narrated from Al-Ambari, he heard from Al-Ambari, that Al-Ambari told him that Al-Marwazi said. Al-Marwazi said, certainly Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala makes apparent whatever He eternally willed. If He willed to make it apparent, from among the signs that show the truthfulness of Islam and the lessons that strengthen the Iman of His creations, then by those signs, Islam would be increased in honor and strength. And the guidance and the evidence that were revealed would be supported. And the signs of prophethood would be spread. These evidences that are a sign of the truthfulness of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, they would be spread. This is as a generosity from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Those signs, those extraordinary signs, are lessons, and they are then more firmly established with the reality of belief in His awliya. Because the religion tells us that there are people known as the awliya. Even in the past, in other nations, there were people who, because of their obedience to Allah, gained a high rank, and they gained the rank of al-wilayah. And they were able to perform extraordinary matters. So not prophets, we're talking about people who have ranks below the ranks of prophets. So Allah gave them this wilayah, this rank. So as a generosity from Allah, those lessons would more firmly be established in the heart. And the reality of the belief in the wilayah of Allah, which Allah gives to others, this would also be firmly established within the heart. And this would be more evidence and proof against those that refused to obey Allah. And hence they did not believe in Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So Al-Marwazi, he wrote all of this. Then whoever was tortured would be tortured with evidences. يعني من هلك عن بينة. The one who decides to destroy himself, then he will have destroyed himself after having seen clear proofs and then having denied them. And whoever was rewarded would be rewarded with evidence, meaning that he saw the signs and he believed, and hence he believes because he has proof and evidence. Hence, praise be to him. No one is God but Allah, the one with the ultimate evidence, i.e., it is impossible for him to be unjust. The one with the dominating control over his creation, the extremely generous. And may Allah raise the rank of our Master Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet of mercy and the Messenger of guidance. And raise the rank of his pure al, and may the salam, peace and mercy of Allah and his blessings be upon him alayhi salatu wassalam. So he gave this brief introduction. This brief introduction, which it talks about some of the fundamental core meanings. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the oneness of Allah and the message of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam and what supports it. Then he began. Al-Marwazi. Remember, so it was Al-Hakim narrating from someone who he heard from, Al-Ambari, who heard this from Al-Marwazi, and Al-Marwazi is saying, and I'll give the time frame as well, he will mention it himself. So Al-Marwazi said, among what we have seen with our own eyes, and witnessed in our time, and know about it with certainty through verification, and as a result of which our certainty about our religion increased, as did our confirmation in what our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, and the truth to which he called, and it encouraged the practice of jihad because of the status of the martyrs, and it increased our faith in what the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam conveyed about the martyrs, which is that, so this is one long sentence. I'll cut it short for you. He's saying that which increased our or strengthened our iman is that we saw something extraordinary in a certain city in Asia. But then he's saying, to flip it around, because we saw something extraordinary in a city or a town in Asia, let me tell you what the results of that were. The results of that were that this increased our certainty in our religion. We are more firm believers now. Our iman was strengthened. He said, what else did this thing that happened do? It confirmed for us that what our Prophet came with is surely true. And also it encouraged us to practice jihad for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, because of what we learned about the status of the martyrs and all that will come. And it increased our faith in what the Prophet conveyed about the martyrs also. And what is it that the Prophet conveyed about the martyrs, alayhi salatu wassalam? He mentioned that Allah revealed in Al-Imran, verses 169 and 170. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ فَرِحِينَ. This means لَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا, that do not consider those that have died in battle for the sake of Allah in al-jihad, do not consider them amwata. Do not consider them to be dead. Bal, in fact, أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. To their Lord they are alive, and they are provided for, and are pleased. They are happy. Provided for, we know that the body of a martyr does not decay. If a Muslim died on the battlefield and then he was left there for 1,000 years, his body would not decay, because of what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, that his soul or her soul would eat from the fruits of paradise, and through that the body would be nourished. Through this, the body would be nourished. So all of this that he is mentioning, he mentioned it in the introduction, that because we saw what we saw, and he's going to mention that, because we saw what we saw, all of this happened. Our faith, it increased, it strengthened. We were encouraged to perform al-jihad and so on. Then he goes on to mention al-Marwazi, what he saw. He said in the year 238 after Hijrah. So this is after Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, who passed away in the year 204. So Al-Imam Malik has already been. Abu Hanifa has already been. Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal came during this time and remained alive for about another 20 or so years. And then he passed away. This time, 238, during this time, you would have had scholars like Al-Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, or he had just passed away. And then shortly after this time, 238, you would have had scholars like Al-Tahawi being born, Abu Ja'far Al-Tahawi, Abu Mansur Al-Maturidi being born, coincidentally in a similar area to where this took place. Abu Hassan Al-Ash'ari, also rahimahullah, having been born. So this was the time of the Salaf. And it takes place, as is going to be mentioned, in Khwarizm. He said, in the year 238 after Al-Hijrah. So they were all among the Salaf, all of these people. Even this female, this honorable female that we're going to mention, she was also among the Salaf. He said, Al-Marwazi said, in the year 238 after Hijrah, I came to a city among the cities of Khwarizm called Hazarast. Hazar in the Persian language, 1,000. Even we in Urdu say Zar, but it's Hazar. It means 1,000 horses. This is the name of the city. And to this day, it is a city that exists. It is a town or a city, if you will, that exists in Uzbekistan. And Uzbekistan and these types of countries, you have Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan on the other side. Azerbaijan is a country that Abdullah ibn Umar, the Sahabi radiyallahu anhu, went to during al-Jihad. So these countries, very early on, many of their people embraced al-Islam. So in the year 238, Al-Marwazi said, I came to a city among the cities of Khwarizm, which is in modern-day Uzbekistan, called Hazarasp, which is to the west of the valley of Jayhun. Jayhun is one of the rivers of paradise. The Prophet ﷺ said, Anharul Jannati Arba'a, Sayhun wa Jayhun wa Nil wal Furat. Jayhun, they call it Ammu Darya, like Darya, but Ammu Darya. So this is Jayhun. He said this city was to the west of the valley of the river Jayhun. And from that city to the largest city of that area, there is a distance of half a day walking. I was informed that there was a woman among the wives of the martyrs. So her husband went into al-Jihad to protect the Muslims, and he was killed. So, kana shaheedan, he was a shaheed. She saw a dream, and in it, it is as if she was fed something. And now she does not eat after the dream. She woke up and now she does not eat or drink anything. Since the time of the rulership of Abu al-Abbas ibn Tahir, the governor of Khurasan. And he, may Allah accept his deeds, had died 8 years before that, 8 years before the time that he visited the city. So then I passed by that city in the year 242, and I saw her. And she told me her story, but I did not take good care to document all of what she told me because of my youth. When you're young and you make notes, it's not like when you're older. You take more care of the things that are said, and so you jot them down. So this is why he says, I was young, so I didn't document everything as well as I would have in my older age. Then I returned to Khwarizm at the end of the year 252. So he was there in 242, and then he was there and he saw her, and he was there 10 years after that, 252. Still remember, among the Salaf, which means that the ranks that the people had then that were high ranks, nobody or very few people will reach those ranks amongst the people after the Salaf. He said, in 252 now, I found her still alive and her story was widespread. The city is in a place where the caravans passed by. And many of those who settled there, if her story reached them, they would love to go and look at her. Like, let's go see this extraordinary person. Hence, the people traveling in the caravans would not ask any man, woman, or child, except that they would know her and point out where she was. Al-Marwazi says, when I reached the area, I sought her and found her outside of the town by many farsakhs. So around 1.5 hours walking distance, about 3 miles. So he said, I found her outside of the city by a walking distance of 1.5 hours. When I went, he said, hence, I went after her by following her traces from village to village. So I'd ask, have you seen this woman? And they would say, yes, she was here, like she was here a short while ago. Then he went to the next one. They said, oh, she just left like this. So he followed her. He said, and then I caught up with her between two villages. She walked in a strong fashion, and she was a middle-aged woman with a good stature and a high chest. The blood was apparent in her. Her cheeks were rosy, and her heart was Zakiyul Fuad means that she was sharp, she was bright. You might have, if you're following the notes, you might have that it says her heart was intelligent. This is not what it means. Yani, Zakiyul Fuad means that, well, it's not literal. It means that she was sharp. She was quick-witted. She was sharp. She was intelligent. She walked, so he's saying, she walked while I rode. So he was on his animal and she was walking. He said, I offered her to ride, but she did not accept. And she started walking with me strongly, a very strong walk, like what we might call today power walking. Among the people who were traveling with me in the session was some traders and landlords. And among them was a scholar called Muhammad ibn Hamdawayh al-Harithi, Ibn al-Hamdawayh, or you can say Ibn al-Hamduyah. And he is the one that Musa ibn Harun al-Bazzar took knowledge from him in Mecca, meaning he was a scholar who had a high rank. And he was a middle-aged man who was worshipful and who narrated hadith. So he's trying to back up his story that, look, there was a scholar with me. I didn't make all this up. Also, there was with us a nice young man called Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman. And he used to show the people of the area who had cases to present to the judge how to swear in front of the judge. Like, I swear by such and such. I swear I didn't do it. I asked them about her, and they praised her greatly and said good things about her. Sometimes what happens, you might have a person who many people praise, but then later on you find out in the community that they're a fraud. All they want is to make money, or they are money grabbing. Sometimes people do this in positions where someone might see them as a religious teacher, as an imam, as a mufti, as allama. Then later on you find out that they're after the world. So he went to ask the local people about her, who knew her well, and he said that they praised her greatly and said good things about her. They said, her situation is clear to us. There is not anyone among us who differs about her. The one who is named Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman, the young one, said, I heard her story when I was young. I was growing up and the people were talking about her story all the time. He said, I dedicated attention to her situation and busied myself with researching it. I did not see except that she was a good, chaste woman, and I did not come across any lie in her claim. And I did not find any trickery or any deception. Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman mentioned some of the people who work for the governors around Khwarizm. In the past, they used to summon her, and they would put her in a house for a month, 2 months, or more, and lock her in. Wal-'iyadhu billah. They would appoint someone to observe her, to see if anyone is bringing her food or drink. And they would not see her eating or drinking at all, nor find any trace of urine or feces. Then they would set her free. And they would give her some clothing and let her go. And this is not permissible for a person to trap someone like this, wal-'iyadhu billah, without a reason. Then when the people of that area had all agreed about or upon her truthfulness, I asked about her story and her name, and I asked her all about her situation. So remember, he found her between two villages, and he was riding on an animal and she was walking with him. Al-Marwazi said, she mentioned that her name was RaHmah bint Ibraaheem. RaHmah, the daughter of Ibraaheem. And that she had a husband who was a poor carpenter. So he would make things out of wood. He earned his livelihood through manual work. And he acquired his rizq day by day. So they lived a very simple life, and he was poor as well. What he earned was never more than what he needed for feeding his family. She had given birth to a number of children for him, meaning they had children together. Al-Aqta', the king of the Turks, came to their village. So, the king of the Turks, when the scholars say, At-Turk in their books, the old scholars, when they say At-Turk, they mean kafir. So, the Turks in the past, they were kuffar. They are a group of people, not from Turkey, from somewhere else, from close to the areas of Mongolia and so on. So the scholars used to call them, if they said, Fulan Turki, or Fulan min al-Turk, it would mean he's a kafir. So Al-Aqta', the king of the Turks, he was among the kings of some of the kuffar, came to their village when the river froze in the winter. He managed to cross the valley along with 3,000 horsemen. So you can imagine that. There is a river that when winter comes, it freezes over. So caravans could even pass over it. But then in the summer, when the spring, it starts to melt, and in the summer, it becomes a river again, so you can't pass over. So when the river froze in the winter, he managed to cross the valley, this king, along with 3,000 horsemen. The people of Khwarizm referred to him as Kasra. Abu al-Abbas al-Marwazi continued. He said that this person, this king, was an extremely arrogant and unjust kafir with strong enmity towards the Muslims. He had been troublesome to the people on the borders, and he was keen on capturing, killing, and raiding the people of Khwarizm. This is modern-day Uzbekistan, or even larger. The governors of Khurasan used to appease him and his likes among the leaders of the non-Arab kuffar, to minimize their harm on the citizens, and to safeguard the shedding of the blood of Muslims. They would send each one of them money, a lot of fine ornaments, and different types of fine clothing as a means of appeasing them. So Al-Marwazi said, one year this kafir was disrespectful to the ruler, and I do not know why that was. Were the gifts late? So he got used to these gifts. Were the gifts late? Or did he consider that what was sent to him was inferior to what was sent to other kings? So he came with his army and he blocked the roads. He killed and maimed and committed corruptions and atrocities, wal-'iyadhu billah. The horsemen of Khwarizm were unable to defeat him. The news of his attack reached Abu al-Abbas Abdullah ibn Tahir, the ruler at that time. May Allah have mercy upon him. So he dispatched 4 commanders. Tahir ibn Ibraaheem ibn Mudrik, number 1. Number 2, Yaqub ibn Mansur ibn Talha. Number 3, Mikal Mawla Tahir. And number 4, Harun al-Ayyab. He loaded the town with soldiers and weapons and arranged them into 4 segments of the region. Each commander took a quarter. They protected the women by the will of Allah. So this is the war that occurred. This is the backdrop to the story of RaHmah. Thereafter, the valley of Jayhun, at the highest point of the river of Balkh, froze over and the cold intensified. It is a great big river, but it is very treacherous and destructive to the crops. When the river expands, its width would be about a farsakh, so almost a mile. And if it would freeze, it would become a level surface, and nothing beneath it can be reached unless a hole is dug into it, like digging wells out of rocks. I have seen, Al-Marwazi said, I have seen the thickness of the ice, 10 handspans. So 10 handspans. And I was informed that in the past it would exceed 20 handspans. When it would freeze, it would serve a bridge for the people of the area. The soldiers, the pack animals, and the caravans would pass over it. And so what is between the 2 banks would become one. It would become connected. Sometimes it would remain frozen for 120 days. If in a year the cold was less, it would remain frozen for 70 days to about 3 months. The women said that the kafir, that king, crossed over with horsemen to the door of the fortress of the city. The people sought refuge in the fortress and gathered their belongings there. This kafir attacked the Muslims in the morning and harmed them. And so the people of the time of the town were detained inside. They were trapped, besieged. They wanted to go out, but the magistrate prevented them until the soldiers of the Sultan and the volunteer fighters arrived. Remember, they're under a caliphate, so they would have sent for help. And so some young men strapped up and went to close the wall of the fortress with whatever weapons they could carry, just to buy themselves some time. They attacked the kuffar. So the kuffar faked a retreat and pulled them away from the buildings and the walls. So when these Muslims followed them, when they got outside, the kuffar returned to them, and the Muslims wound up in something like the forest. So they were trapped. They sought cover and took a structure to fight from behind it. So there was an erected structure, whatever it was. They used it as a base. They were hiding behind it and made it the focus of their defense. They were separated from the fortress and help was far from them. They battled the most severe battling. They stayed firm until their bowstrings popped and their bows snapped, meaning they fought hard. The tiredness reached them, and they were touched by hunger and thirst. Most of them were killed, and the rest were inflicted with severe injuries. When the night came, both factions, Muslims and kuffar, fell back. The women said that the fires were lit on the mountaintops. The hour the blasphemers, or the hour the kafir crossed over. The signal reached Jurjaniyah, which is a large city on the outskirts of Khwarizm. So if the Muslims had a problem, they would go to the mountaintops and light a fire, so other Muslims in another city far away would see it, and then they would also light their beacon until it reaches the countries or the areas where the Muslim armies were ready and mobilized, and then the Khalifa would order for them to send. The signal reached Jurjaniyah, which is a large city on the outskirts of Khwarizm. where Mikal Mawla Tahir was with his army. So he rushed to respond out of reverence for the leader, Ibn Tahir. May Allah have mercy upon him. He ran with his army to this city, Haza Rasb, that we mentioned, in a day and a night. 40 Khwarizmi farsakhs. So however many miles that comes out to, 60 or... And those were much bigger than the Khurasani farsakhs, meaning it was a long distance, probably about 50 miles. The kuffar decided to wipe out the band the next day. When that was in progress, the black flags showed up and they heard the sounds of the drums. So they retreated from the people and Mikal reached the battlefield. So the Muslim army came. The black flags here signifies the Muslim army. They reached Hazar Rasb. He buried the dead and carried the wounded. So they did like a cleanup exercise. They buried the dead. They would have prayed janazah on them and taken those that need aid to where they can get aid. The women, or rather the woman said, this particular RaHmah, that evening we had 400 funerals in the fortress. Ya Latif. 400 funerals in the fortress. There was no house except there was a dead person carried to it. And this is the case. In an Islamic country, if the Muslims are attacked, then everybody has to defend. Everybody in the streets, everybody has to defend. So this is what happened here. Everybody was defending, the young and so on. It was a widespread tragedy, and the whole region shook with crying, she said. My dead husband was placed in front of me, so I was overcome with extreme sadness and crying, as a young woman would cry over her husband, the father of her children, and we had dependents. The women of my family and neighbours gathered to help me through the crying. So she is informing this person who is still riding on his horse, and she is walking with him. The children came, and they were babies. They had no concept of the issue of death and someone being torn away from them. They asked for bread, and I did not have any. And my chest was tightened by my situation because of the anxiety. Then I heard the adhaan of Maghrib, so I went to resort to the prayer. In times of hardship, we obey Allah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. She said, I prayed what my Lord ordained for me, al-Maghrib, and whatever Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala willed for her to pray, or optional prayers if she prayed. Then I prostrated, supplicating. And I was beseeching Allah, Allah the exalted, asking him for patience and for him to mend the orphanage of my children, to take care of them. Then sleep took me away in my prostration. I saw myself in my dream, as if I was in a beautiful land with many stones. I was seeking my husband. A man called me. Where are you going? Ya Amat Allah, Ya Hurra. Where are you going, O free woman? Where are you going? And I said, I'm seeking my husband. So she's dreaming now on that night. He said, take the right, meaning turn right. She said, I saw a level land. It was fragrant and had plenty of greenery. And behold, there were palaces and buildings that I am unable to describe, and the likes of which I have never seen. And there were rivers flowing on the face of the earth without banks. The scholars who interpreted dreams, they said whoever sees himself in paradise in a dream will surely enter it. So this is a good news for a person. If they see themselves in paradise, they know it to be paradise in their dream, then they said, La Buddha an yadkhulaha. He must certainly enter it. One of the students of Sheikh Abdullah, he once told Sheikh Abdullah that I saw myself in paradise. So the Sheikh said that قال المعبرون قال أهل التعبير تعبير الرؤيا, those who interpret dreams, من رأى نفسه في الجنة فلا بد أن يدخلها. Then he will enter it, meaning he'll die as a Muslim. Surely he will die as a Muslim. So look at the things she's describing. These are the descriptions of paradise. For rivers to flow without banks, to flow on the surface without deep channels. This is the description of paradise. Greenery and large palaces and buildings that she's not able to describe. She said, I ended up at some people who were sitting circle by circle. They were sitting in circles. They were wearing green clothing, and green clothing is the clothing of the people of paradise. They were wearing green clothing, and they were engulfed in light. And behold, they were the people who were killed in the battle, eating from food laid out for them. I started going between them and examining their faces so that I would meet my husband. However, he saw me and he called me, Oh RaHmah. This is her name, RaHmah bint Ibraaheem. Oh RaHmah. So I followed the voice, and behold, he was in the same situation in which I saw the other martyrs, the other shuhada. His face was like the full moon. He was eating with his companions that were killed with him that day. He said to his companions, this poor woman, he said, هذه البائسة جائعة. This poor woman, he's talking about his wife, this poor woman has been hungry all day. Do you permit me to give her something to eat? They permitted him. So she said, he gave me in my dream a piece of the bread. She said, I knew at that time that it was bread, but I did not know how it was made. It was, imagine, these people are people who themselves make bread. They make bread, they go to the wells to get the water themselves, they go to harvest whatever they grow and so on. So she said, I knew it was bread, but I didn't know how it was grown because this is not like what we grow. I don't know how it was made, how it was mixed, how the dough was mixed with water and then cooked. She said, but I did not know how it was made. It was whiter than snow and milk, sweeter than honey and sugar, and softer than butter and fat. I ate it, and when it settled in my belly, he said, go. Allah has given you sufficient food and drink for the rest of your life in the dunya. She said, I woke up from my sleep satiated and quenched. I was full and I was quenched. I wasn't thirsty. I needed neither food nor drink. And she said, I have not tasted them since then until this day of mine, nor anything the people eat. I have eaten nothing since that day. Abu al-Abbas al-Marwazi said, she used to sit with us. So she's told him all of this, and then she used to sit with us. We used to eat, and she would gag and take hold of her nose, claiming that she is harmed by the smell of food. So I asked her, do you seek nutrition from anything or drink anything other than water? She said, no. I asked her, do gas and waste? So he wants details. He said, does gas and waste come out of you like other people? She said, I have not experienced waste since that time, meaning going to the bathroom. I said, and menstruation? And he said, I think that she said, It stopped when the eating stopped. Then he said, do you have the women's need for men? She said, are you not shy of asking me things like this? So he kind of stepped the mark. He went too far. So I said, it is so I can tell the people about you. And it is necessary that I would be thorough. She said, I do not need it. I said, do you sleep? She said, yes, the sweetest of sleep. He said, what do you see in your dreams? She said, like you see. I said, do you experience weakness because of the lack of food? She said, I have not felt hunger since I was fed that food. She used to accept charity. I said to her, what do you do with it? She said, I clothe myself and my children. I said to her, do you feel the cold? And are you harmed by heat? She said, yes. I said, do you become tired when you walk? She said, yes. Am I not human? I said, do you make wudu for salah? She said, yes. I said, why? She said, the scholars ordered me with that. So this is a woman who has a special case. She doesn't eat. She doesn't drink. She doesn't get hungry. And with all the situations that she are extraordinary to her, she asked the scholars about her situation, what she needs to do in certain situations. So she said, well, the scholars ordered me, which tells us she was someone who learned the religious knowledge. He asked her, do you make wudu for salah? She said, yes. I said, why? She said, the scholars ordered me with that. I say they have given her this fatwa from the hadith that wudu is not obligatory except for impurity or sleep. She mentioned to me that her stomach is stuck to her back. So I ordered a woman who was with us, and she looked, i.e. without looking at her aura, without looking between the navel and the knee. And her stomach was as she described. She took a bag, stuffed it with cotton, and tied it to her stomach so that her back would not snap when she walked. He said, I never ceased, Al-Marwazi is saying now, after 252, I never ceased to visit Haza Rasab every 2 or 3 years. And she would meet with me, and I would repeat the questions. She would not add anything or omit anything. I presented her talk to Abdullah ibn Abdul Rahman, the faqih, the scholar. He said, I have heard this talk since I was raised, and I have never found anyone who denies it or claims he heard that she eats or drinks or defecates, goes to the bathroom. Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari, rahimahullah, after narrating this, he said, this story proves that there is no necessary intellectual relation between lack of food and sickness, between the loss of health and degeneration of the body. So lack of food, it's not absolutely necessary that if it's not that one causes, it's not absolutely necessary that one would result from the other, that a lack of food would result in sickness, or that a lack of food would result in a loss of health, or that a lack of food would result in the degeneration of the body. Likewise, it is mentally valid that the rest of the normal reasons would be devoid of their results. Furthermore, it proves that things are by the will of Allah, the exalted, and that the martyrs have a life in the graves. Glory be to the one who has power over everything. This story, among many stories, that the scholars mention shows that reasons do not create their results. Causes do not create their effects. When you learn about this, about cause and effect, cause is created by Allah and the effect is created by Allah, you start to look at the world in a slightly different way. When you think that the glass of water, when you drink it, you might drink millions of glasses of water and it might not fill you unless Allah creates the attribute of quenching within the water. It makes you appreciate even more the power of Allah and the generosity of Allah and the mercy of Allah to His slaves. It gives you a greater appreciation for the creating of Allah and how many things come into existence every second. And how it is the case that mostly, there are things like fire, mostly it burns. Food, it satiates. Drink, it quenches. If you fall off from a high place, usually you'll be crushed. If something falls on top of you and it's heavy, usually you will be crushed. These things are all cause and effect. Cause and effect, cause and effect. Had Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala willed, then at any point when there are millions of people around the world, and the same thing is happening, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. Had Allah Ta'ala willed, and sometimes it is the case, that some of these things, the causes occur, but the effects do not happen. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is the one who by His will, His knowledge and His power is managing all of that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of the awliya, or at least one among the awliya that I heard of, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gave him an ability such that he wouldn't sleep. Sleep wouldn't come to him. So he would perform acts of worship all day and all night. All day and all night. He wouldn't sleep. And there are others that wouldn't eat, others that wouldn't drink, and others that were given other things that they would do. They would walk through fire, for example. All of this because they reached a high rank. Not that they wanted that for themselves, but Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala gave them this ability. Some of the scholars said, Baini wa bain Allahi shay', that I have with Allah Ta'ala, yani Allah creates something for me, by which I know or I feel from my kashf that certain foods I shouldn't eat them. Like if someone brought him some meat and he would extend his hand out to eat it, he said that if my hand started to shiver, then that would mean through my kashf that the meat, there's maybe something wrong with it. I wouldn't say that it was haram, but I wouldn't eat it. Each time this would happen, he said, I wouldn't eat it. He said, I believe that this is something special that Allah granted me. So the most important lesson to take from this story, which is a true story, and other stories, is that the causes do not create the effects. So this makes you more hopeful as well. Look, if you know that Allah Ta'ala is the one that creates fire and the burning in the fire, cause and effect, you know that Ibraaheem alayhi salam was not burned by the fire. The ropes were burned. So this makes you more hopeful in making dua for things that usually you would think that, oh, well, this has happened, so this will be the effect, right? This hardship I'm going through, it's going to result in this. This gives you more hope that, look, let me make dua. It's not necessary that if I'm in this situation, then certainly that situation will follow. So you make dua. You know Allah is the one that creates the causes. You might be in a situation. And the effects that usually follow those causes. So why don't I ask Allah to relieve me, even if it is something that is extraordinary, even if it's something that's beyond the norm. let me ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, for indeed He is my Lord, and He is the one that is generous, and if Allah eternally will, He would give. Why not ask? So this increases our hopefulness in asking Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to fix our situations that we might consider sometimes to be ones that we're not going to get out of. It's something that, it follows certain steps and that's it. No, this gives you hope. This gives you hope if you have a strong reliance upon Allah, believing that He caused, Allah Ta'ala created the cause, and Allah, if He wills, will create the effect, and the effect doesn't have to come into existence just because the cause came into existence. And this is part of at-Tawheed. This is a part of at-Tawheed because it solidifies in our hearts that Allah is the creator, and He created absolutely everything, whether it was good or bad, Iman or kufr, good deeds or sins. So we'll end today, inshaAllah, here. Let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.